was named Charles Cohen, a London-based managing director of a web marketing agency, the type of business that was flourishing at the time. This led Charles to not only have some money to invest, but also some ideas of where else the web could take us. One of Charles's bugbears was loyalty programs, and in particular their lack of proliferation. Sure, you could rack up points on your Safeway ABC card or Boots Advantage card, but you could only spend the points in that particular outlet, meaning a lot of spending or a lot of time to reap any kind of reward. So how about a scheme that was non-proprietary, interchangeable between businesses, and really more like a currency than a store scheme? As he worked on the idea, it became clear that this could not only be a micropayment system, but an entire web currency and customer management tool based around what he would coin the butterfly model. Here was the principle. The company would sell beans to web merchants for 1 cent each. Merchants would award beans to consumers for activities such as registering on their website, checking out a deal, or making a purchase. These activities were labelled e-work. Once the consumer had racked up enough beans from whichever vendors they chose, then they can spend them on products or services at web merchants in the scheme, who would then retire these beans back to the company for half a cent, completing the cycle and providing an alternative web currency free of conversion rates, the hassles of card payment, or risk of online fraud. What's not to like? This concept was branded as the web's currency, and the goal was to actually challenge the world's major currencies. With this alluring idea in hand, and along with fellow Oxford University graduate and co-founder Neil Forrester, who incidentally was also in the 4th season of MTV's The Real World.
My name is Neil, I'm from Oxford, and I'm currently dropping out of a PhD in psychology. And I've had this opportunity to pursue my true love, which is music.
Charles set to work, raising capital from friends, family and other contacts. Initially $1.8 million was raised from these angel investors, enough to get the ball rolling. By December 1998, that ball had gained enough momentum to make beans a reality. With Charles initially taking the place of Chief Technical Officer and Neil as Head of Development, alongside colleagues David King as Head of Sales, Philip Letts as CEO, and John Hogg as Head of Marketing, Beans was in motion. Looking to establish the company as a global business, one of the first literal moves was to relocate the head office from London to New York, whilst opening another in San Francisco in order to establish connections and make deals with vendors face to face. Conducting business over the internet wasn't really an option at this point, and so this initial funding was key to establish a strong footing to launch the Beans currency. Progress in these areas brought further investment from private equity firm Gefenor USA, allowing Beans to officially launch in the US and UK during March 1999. Initially, this is what Beans.com looked like, boldly displaying the headline, "It's like money, but better," and with the claim that you can earn them online anywhere, save them in your personal account, then spend them online anywhere. Anywhere might have been a stretch, but vendors were lining up, with the very first merchant to offer beans being 21store.com. Remember this place? I mean, check out that Scion Series 5 with free power adapter for £329. Nice. By signing up here, I'd have got myself a cool 100 free beans, and then I could go wherever the links take me. Maybe after a few months I could get some discount on that Scion Series 5, or even a Dreamcast. Now we're talking. At this point, the Beans staff numbered less than 100, and were consumed mainly in making deals with other online merchants to trade in beans, which from a merchant's point of view was actually a pretty compelling prospect. In these days it was costing some businesses $20 per customer acquisition. That is to get a customer onto their website, to sign up, and to set the scene for a potential purchase, or at the very least obtain vital demographic and email data from the registee for future marketing purposes. The beans model could do the same for less than $5, depending on how many beans the retailer offered the consumer as an incentive. With this, many retailers were quick to actually abandon their own points or discount schemes and jump on the rapidly growing and cost-effective beans wagon, seemingly proving Charles's non-proprietary theory correct. Of course, to get merchant interest, Beans had to also get consumer interest. This was done by not only pushing a big marketing campaign in print, billboard and online, but also using somewhat unorthodox guerrilla methods under the leadership of Chief Marketing Officer Nicholas DeSantis. A Beans army was recruited to visit cities in an almost parade fashion, dressed up as massive kidney beans, handing out lollies and even slipping flyers into the pockets of passers-by without them noticing. It sounds almost like a crime, but this is what the late 90s demanded, and people sucked it up. All of this not only got Beans noticed in the press, but also presented a fun and playful vibe, endearing customers to this new fun brand, welcoming in this alluring digital age whilst abandoning the old, rigid, established and institutionalized ways of yesteryear. Another hurdle was to convince the Financial Services Authority in London, along with each governing body in future regions, that they weren't launching an actual new currency, as it was illegal or heavily regulated in most countries. This was done by stipulating the rules that beans cannot be transferred from consumer to consumer, and that beans can also not be bought directly, posing them as a marketing device rather than currency. However, this didn't stop their London offices from being raided on suspicion of being an unlicensed bank. On closer inspection, it was revealed that the Bank of Beans link on their website was merely a marketing term which took users to their account statement area. However, this link was changed to My Beans going forward to smooth matters out. In August 1999, with Beans flying about left, right and centre, another hurdle was encountered, this time by a US retailer offering 100,000 beans instead of 50 for a given transaction. It was a beans frenzy, making each transaction worth $1,000. After 1.5 million beans had been collected, a software fraud alarm sounded. A bit too late, if you ask me. People flocked to the website to claim a crapload of free beans, only for Beans.com to swipe them back hours later, declaring them illegitimate. This of course caused anger among users, but also meant Beans were swift to tighten controls on their software, especially for vendors who perhaps didn't know what they were doing. By September 1999, and in part thanks to encouraging words from people like Larry Ellison, CEO of Oracle, Beans.com had secured an additional $30 million in investments, including $5 million from Larry himself, and were looking like the next hot thing to conquer the internet. Beans logos were appearing on retailers' sites far and wide, and the catalogue of participating businesses was growing day by day. If their online presence was looking promising, so was their office. In line with other .com locations at the time, Beans' headquarters was described as looking like something from a high-tech playroom, fitted out with games machines and life-sized talking Yodas. Slimy! But the next year would be crucial in determining the fate of this so-called e-currency. From the outside, the Beans scheme didn't seem to have any losers. Retailers gained sales, customers gained beans, and Beans.com gained income. However, there were problems on the horizon, and one of them appeared in the form of Whoopi Goldberg.
Poor kid, you don't know what they want because you're old. Old, honey. Give them Flu's online gift currency. It's just like money. You send it by email, they spend it at some of the web's coolest stores, and you come out hip and smart.
Whoopi Goldberg was now the face of Flu's, a business with similar goals to Beans, although implemented in a slightly different way. With Flu's, you could either gain promotional credits, or you could buy credits, which roughly translated were gift certificates you could use across a variety of stores. Flu's perhaps didn't have a model that was as sustainable as Beans, but their marketing campaigns had drawn interest and perhaps eroded the uniqueness of the Beans concept. Likewise, this was the year that other schemes, such as MyPoints, NetCentives, CyberGold, InternetCash.com, and even PayPal, known at the time as X.com, had started up. with companies like eBay seeking a credible way forward for online payments. Combined with the likes of Microsoft, Compaq and IBM developing software to take the bite out of transaction costs on small credit card payments, Beans had competition on their hands in this rapidly expanding world of digital currency. However, Beans soldiered on. As well as offering the ability for those under the age of 18 to make payments, with 13 to 18-year-olds making up 25% of their business, one of the key selling points for the company was the ease of integration. Retailers could enable Beans payments on their websites by inserting just a few lines of code. The consumer could download a Beans counter, which sat on their Windows toolbar and would count their beans in real time, with website accruement and spending updated as you went. However, increasing competition put Beans on a scheme of rapid expansion, keen to secure all global markets before anyone else. By June 2000, an extra $39.5 million capital had been secured by a variety of venture capital firms, and Beans offices had been opened in Italy, France, Australia, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and even Greater China. The only problem was, some of these markets needed to be dealt with in different manners, and cracks began to show in the business model. For example, rather than selling beans directly to a vendor in Hong Kong, their local office, which was run by New World Cyberbase Limited following an exclusivity agreement, would purchase beans directly from the New York office at a discounted rate and then trade with vendors. These vendors would then retire the beans back to New York at the original half-cent rate, therefore eroding revenues. A similar setup was implemented for Italy through Gruppo L'Espresso, and in fact these groups helped inject funding into Beans.com itself. As well as providing this funding, these steps were seen as necessary to get the contacts and make progress in these foreign markets, but it meant that direct sales, perhaps the biggest benefit of this internet model, couldn't be realised. This added complexity and cost into a model that Charles described as,
"We are really running an economy, not just managing a business,"
was becoming even more evident with a project which allowed customers to accrue their points to a Mondex MasterCard, crossing the bridge between a currency only useful on the net and the real world. This rewards card was launched in North America in August 2000, allowing beans to be credited automatically at the POS terminal. In fact, the partnership had developed the ability to even earn and spend beans via wireless devices such as digital TV and WAP-enabled smartphones, over a decade ahead of what we use today with contactless integrations. Beans.com, which had been valued at $100 million at the start of the year, was now valued at $450 million. It had 260 employees and was still growing. At this time, a total of 2.3 billion beans were in circulation, with 4 million registered users, and the site getting 2 million hits per month. Some 500 merchants were compensating customers in beans, with around a third of that accepting payment in them as well. Income-wise, with each compensating merchant ordering around $40,000 worth per month on average, income